Okay, hello everybody. Today, as we open up our new course, I would like to go ahead and talk about what is a dinosaur. You are taking this course because you are really interested in dinosaurs, obviously. Maybe you haven't learned a lot of new stuff about dinosaurs since like you were a little kid. And get ready for a lot of fun stuff because we're getting into paleontology, the study of ancient life. So it's a really good mixture of both biology and geology. So we have to learn quite a bit about both biology and geology in order to understand anything about ancient life, like dinosaurs. So we're not memorizing a bunch of stuff like what's the fastest dinosaur, the biggest dinosaur, or any of the other facts that you learned about from books when you were a kid, because, well, first of all, we really don't know a lot of those things. We can't really answer them, but also it's a lot more fun and a lot more complicated than just some basic facts. So we'll learn how to think about dinosaurs too. So we'll get into anatomy, evolution, processes of fossilization, and sedimentary rocks, all of which, and of course, the big concept of geologic time, deep time, all of which allow us to understand this really cool chapter of the history of our planet and life upon it. So welcome. I want to go ahead and get started with what is a dinosaur. First of all, a little picture of me working on a Triceratops brain case out in the field in northern Montana. As a paleontologist, you often end up doing a lot of field work. Now, what I'm doing now, my recent research is not really involving field work, but this is where you often collect, you got to get the dinosaurs in the lab in the first place. And then once in the lab, you could do some really cool stuff with them, which I will talk about in a little bit. So I like to start out a dinosaurs course with trying to discuss, okay, what is a dinosaur? Because we have a lot of misconceptions about what is a dinosaur. We tend to think that anything that's extinct, big, scary, with big teeth is a dinosaur. So we can kind of, we tend to not really think about evolution or relatedness. We just kind of group everything ancient and big together as a dinosaur. But all these animals here live during vastly different time periods, and some of them aren't even reptiles, so that automatically means we're not dinosaurs. So we're thinking about relatedness when we think about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are actually a very specific branch on the tree of life. So let's go ahead and think for a second, and you can pause this video whenever you like, as we think about what is a dinosaur. So, and I'll give you a hint in just a minute. So go ahead and think about which ones of these animals are dinosaurs. So go ahead and pause me then if you want to think about it. Okay, so, and I'll go ahead and give you a hint now. Two of these animals are dinosaurs, all right? Just two. All right, go ahead and think about it again. Okay, so before we answer the question of which two of these animals are dinosaurs, let's go ahead and think a little bit about geologic time. Let's think about dinosaurs in the big scheme of things. So we have kind of a little cladogram, a little kind of tree of life here, at least with chordates anyway, the vertebrates essentially. And we're thinking about, as we look at these trees of life or cladograms, phylogenetic trees, whatever we would like to call them, we are looking at ancestors first at the base, right? Because that's also more ancient. And we're always thinking about time. I'm going to go ahead and draw a little arrow. And that's a good idea whenever you're looking at a cladogram to realize that we're not just looking at groupings of life. We're not just thinking of the old Linnaean system, kingdom, phylum, class, order, whatever. We're thinking about time and how these relationships have changed over time and given rise to new groups. So we can go back to the Ordovician, going about 500 or so million years ago, up through today into the Paleogene and the Neogene periods of time, here called Tertiary and Quaternary. Which are kind of old terms, and don't worry about that. But anyway, so this would be more recent. So the fact that we have these blue bars making it all the way to the top means that these are representatives alive today. Okay, so when we think about what is a reptile, we think about animals today, obviously. So what is a mammal? What is a bird? And it's very, very obvious to us that a tiger, for instance, is a mammal because it nurses its young, it gives live birth, more or less. It has fur. Those are pretty mammal characters. Obviously, there are exceptions. Birds have feathers. They lay eggs. Walk on two legs, right? Generally have wings, whether or not they can fly. Reptiles, scaly skin. They often lay eggs. That sort of thing. So we can really, fish, kind of that's a whole other thing too. We have very different groups of fish. So we kind of think about these animals as being very, very distinct from one another. And it's very easy to tell the difference between a reptile and a bird and a mammal. Well, once we start digging into fossils, we find out that we're getting into the bases of these groups, the basal groups. And that means that the difference between a reptile and a mammal gets really, really fuzzy. The difference between an amphibian and a reptile is really, really hard to establish. So when we're looking at the fossil record, the relationships between these things keep getting blurrier, and that's kind of the issue we have with dinosaurs. So dinosaurs are a specific branch, again, on the tree of life. Somewhere they're a type of reptile, right? Not like snakes or lizards, but as far as their ancestry goes, they are a type of reptile, and they give rise to birds. Okay, and we'll get into that more later. We're going to be talking about birds a lot during this class. So it's easy to think about. So when we go back to the base and we think about what dinosaurs are, it gets really, really hard to establish them from other kind of more closely related reptiles too. And the word reptile doesn't really mean a whole lot. That's actually a big issue in modern day phylogenetic studies. As we look at the word reptile, well, it's actually kind of distantly related groups of animals we've kind of thrown together as reptiles. We want to get a little more specific. So anyway, that's a little bit about what a cladogram is. We're going to be looking at these a lot through this course. And this may help us to kind of think about, okay, we're not just looking at any old animal as a dinosaur. We're looking at a very specific branch of the tree of life. So let's go back to our pictures then and talk about which of these are dinosaurs and which are not, and why that's the case. So two of them I want to talk about right off the bat that are very obviously, I hope, not dinosaurs. Now, if you thought any of these was a dinosaur for whatever reason, that's okay. The whole class is about, talking about what are dinosaurs. So we can go ahead and knock out these guys for a few reasons. First of all, the woolly mammoth, while we do see skeletons of them on display a lot in museums, and I often hear kids say things like, oh, it's a dinosaur, because anything that's big with a skeleton is a dinosaur, right? I don't know, that seems to be a thing. But anyway, no, it's a type of elephant, not too distantly related to our Asian elephant today. And not that time really determines relatedness or what is or what isn't an organism, but the woolly mammoths were around way, way, way more recently than our big dinosaurs, what we think of as a dinosaur. So was Megalodon, the shark. This is Carcharocles megalodon, the big shark that Discovery Channel had some stuff about him. Anyway, he was around pretty recently too. Not quite as recent as the woolly mammoth, went extinct about 3 million years ago. But also, sharks are another distinct branch on the tree of life. They are a type of fish that has a cartilaginous skeleton. Okay. By the way, the woolly mammoth would be in here, mammal. We're still not narrowing down on the dinosaur circle yet. So let's get a little bit closer. So these are not dinosaurs because they're not around during the time of the dinosaurs anyway. They didn't coincide with them, but also, yeah, they're mammals and fish. We need to look at reptiles if we want to get close to what is a dinosaur. So we have some reptiles here. Couple of these are on the complete wrong lineage to be dinosaurs. They are actually more closely related as kind of what used to be called mammal-like reptiles, more closely related to us than they are to dinosaurs. See how the word reptile becomes problematic? Something like Dimetrodon could kind of be considered a reptile, but definitely not a dinosaur, and not even closely related to dinosaurs or to other reptiles of the time. We also have this guy over here on the right, a Gorgonopsid. This is definitely on the path toward becoming a mammal, not a true mammal yet, but we're getting there. So as we go back, whoopsie, to our chart, they also don't live at the right time. Dimetrodon did not live with dinosaurs. He lived during the Permian. Gorgonopsids, yeah, during the Permian too. So we have a dinosaur over here, and I kind of tried to match up the time span for the big non-avian dinosaurs anyway, very late Triassic to the end of the Cretaceous. Okay, so we need to find a reptile, but it also needs to kind of be around in this time period to be something like a dinosaur. And this is where, while geologic time doesn't determine relatedness or ancestry, really, I can't say that something's not a dinosaur because it didn't live during the time of the dinosaurs. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it does mean that but we do have a tendency, because we're thinking on such short time spans, we're thinking of millions or hundreds of millions of years is pretty much impossible, I think, for humans to do. It's easy for us to think about anything prehistoric as living all around at the same time, okay? But dinosaurs lived during a very specific time in Earth history that is very different, about 100 million years different than that of the Dimetrodon and the Gorgonopsid we just saw, that were kind of pre-mammal-like reptiles. So yeah, mammal ancestors definitely predate the dinosaurs, absolutely. Dinosaurs are not as ancient as we often kind of tend to think. Again, not that that matters for relatedness. Okay, so what else? Now we need to get into some reptiles. Okay, well, the bird, what's he doing here? Okay, well, we'll deal with that. But anyway, let's get into some reptiles that were around during the time of the dinosaurs. That's kind of narrowing into our branch a little bit more. Well, we have a few. We have a Mosasaurus over here, which is a marine reptile that was around during the Cretaceous period. And this is actually, we think they're more closely related to things like snakes and lizards, particularly things like monitor lizards, the Komodo dragon, for instance. So they probably do have ancestors, very distant ancestors alive today. Plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs, similarly, are also not dinosaurs. No dinosaurs swam. I know Spinosaurus, it's a whole different thing, but but they generally were not marine reptiles. These are not dinosaurs. What about this guy? A crocodile. So this is a type of crocodile. This is probably Sarcosuchus. There's a few of these huge crocodiles that, yeah, did live during the time of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic era, and they probably predated upon dinosaurs as well. They certainly predated upon dinosaurs. This is about as close as it gets to a dinosaur. That's not actually a dinosaur here. This is a type of reptile called an archosaur that is kind of closely related to dinosaurs. In fact, we could consider crocodiles one of the closest living ancestors to dinosaurs. So yeah, there were ancient crocodiles. This other guy too, a pterosaur, pterodactyl, people often refer to, a flying reptile, also quite closely related to the dinosaurs, but not actually a dinosaur. And nothing to do with the evolution of the birds either. So dinosaurs, largely during much of the Mesozoic, they didn't swim, they didn't fly. Okay, there's going to be some exceptions, but when we think about our marine reptiles like mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and then our flying reptiles like pterosaurs, yeah, these are not dinosaurs. So what do we do? Two of these guys are dinosaurs. So hopefully, and I bet most people did this, you figured out that this Diplodocus here is a dinosaur. This is a sauropod dinosaur. It is truly a dinosaur. The other one, and this is where this is kind of a trick thing, is this little modern day warbler, a Blackburnian warbler, one of the most beautiful little birds in North America, I think, tiny little guy. And we often, I hear people say things like, oh, do you know chickens are related to dinosaurs or ostriches are related to dinosaurs? Yeah, sure. All birds are dinosaurs. So to say that an ostrich is more closely related to the dinosaurs than hummingbirds doesn't really make sense. They are all technically dinosaurs because of details in anatomy that we will get into later. So as we're determining relatedness of a group, it's all about anatomy. And that's what's important here, not time, not what they look like or how big their teeth were really, or how scary they were, or anything like that that we tend to think about as dinosaurs. It's all about anatomy. And that's what's going to mean then, or that's what means then that the sauropod dinosaur and this little tiny theropod with no teeth at all, this warbler, are dinosaurs. So we will get into that more later on. So that means that we do have dinosaurs alive today. And that also means that we have dinosaur DNA today, too. So we don't have to worry about trying to find fossilized dinosaur DNA. We have it. You probably had some for dinner last night if you had some chicken or turkey dinner, right? I'm serious. Okay, so we are looking at geologic time, though, in this course, and this is very difficult to kind of think on a big scale. But as we go back, so we're looking at modern day times here. So this is today, right? We have like an ancient human, and then we're going back, back, back. Well, the the dinosaur era, the Mesozoic, dates from the very end of the Triassic. Dinosaurs evolved about 228 million years ago, all the way through the Jurassic, and finally the Cretaceous. And this is where the non-avian, the non-bird dinosaurs, of course, went extinct for reasons we're not really sure. Then we have the Cenozoic, which is kind of considered the age of mammals. That could more accurately be considered the age of birds, in which case we are still very much living in the age of dinosaurs. Okay, so as we're looking at things like Dimetrodon, this sail-backed reptile, we're looking back into the Permian a good 100 million years before dinosaurs ever evolved. When we think about things like the big dragonflies, Meganura, I believe was its name, with the about 2-3 feet wide wingspan. We're going even further back to the Pennsylvanian, getting about 350 million years ago, where coal swamps formed and all that. And as we look at the fossils here in the greater Cincinnati area, we're going back to about 450 million years ago towards the end, about 440 million years ago, towards the end of the Ordovician period, where there was really no life at all, except for some little plants, maybe bacteria, a lot of bacteria on land. All life was in the seas. There were barely even any fish at that point. So really not a lot of vertebrates. Everything was an invertebrate animal that lived in the seas. And that's pretty cool. So and Ice Age stuff here with that woolly mammoth, much, much, much more recently. So when we're thinking about what is a dinosaur, again, it's also good to know what lived around the time of the dinosaurs, like those marine reptiles, like the pterosaurs, like that giant crocodile, but not other animals, not a lot of these other animals we've been looking at. Okay, so anyway, and it's also, as we're thinking about geologic time, it's also important to know that we're talking about dinosaurs changing a lot throughout geologic time too. So dinosaurs evolved, right, toward the end of the Triassic, then they're through the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. And in all these different periods, a span or a time period that spans about 160, 180 or so million years, there were many, many different kinds at different times. Okay. So, and I think this is one of my favorite facts that a lot of us, kind of talk about as we're educators, that something like Tyrannosaurus rex, which lived at the very end of the Cretaceous, one of the last dinosaurs, one of the last non-avian dinosaurs, right? Gotta always say that, is separated by more time from an animal like Stegosaurus, which thrived during the Jurassic period, than we are separated from Tyrannosaurus rex. Okay, so when Tyrannosaurus rex was walking around on the Earth, he was probably stomping on the ancient fossilized bones of Stegosaurus and Brachiosaurus and these other Jurassic dinosaurs, much as we can walk through parts of Montana and trip over a Tyrannosaurus rex fossilized leg bone or something like that. So just putting that in perspective, the whole reign of the dinosaurs was such a long time span, and they didn't coincide necessarily, not geographically and not certainly by time either. So I think that's also a cool thing to keep in mind. They have their own pathways, their own evolutionary pathways, and their own histories. Each lineage does. So again, dinosaurs here on our tree of life. So we could think about, we have our reptiles branching off here, and then dinosaurs are making up this special branch of the reptiles that then leads to and includes birds. So again, we're talking about a specific branch on the tree of life, just like we're talking about what is a mammal or what is I don't want to say what is a fish, because that's a whole other thing. Fish don't really make up a nice group either, not like dinosaurs do. They're as bad as reptiles for that. Or what is an aster? The types of flowers with compound multiple petals. What is a type of Insect, that's a nice group too. You know, bird or dinosaurs can be talked about like that, and they're going to include the whole rest of that branch, not just the big dinosaurs that we think about. So Dinosauria as a group then is recognized as a single major group of organisms, all descendants of a common basal dinosaur ancestor. Somewhere down here at the base of the dinosaur tree, we have some good ideas as to what those are. That's not really something I know much about. I tend to study Cretaceous dinosaurs. Anyway, so dinosaurs tend to be different from other reptiles in that they have upright legs. And there's another special group of reptiles that actually predates the dinosaurs that had this too, called the pseudosuchians, kind of more closely related to crocodiles. But they are still anatomically different from dinosaurs. But we can think about how a crocodile today has kind of, kind of sprawling legs a little bit, not as much as lizards, but definitely a little bit sprawling. Dinosaurs have upright legs, which has a lot to do with a much more advanced breathing system. The same kind of breathing system that then birds are going to use to literally take to the skies and be super, super successful. Dinosaurs evolved that. Pretty much every major trait we see in birds, including brooding behavior, feathers, intelligence, good color vision, all of that evolved in some dinosaur lineage first. Hollow bones, oh yeah, definitely. And that's pretty special. So birds are basically set up for success. I'd say that about pretty much all groups, you have to have the characteristics in place already in your ancestry before, before something can really evolve into something new, I guess. Okay, what else? So dinosaurs tend to have extra hip vertebrae, but they have a more simple hinge joint, a more simple or ankle joint, which is going to allow for more efficient movement, which is really, really important. We need to be able to move with agility and efficiency, and that's kind of going to give dinosaurs the edge when we have a big extinction event that wiped out much of their reptile competition. And dinosaurs are also typified by having either scales or feathers, and a lot of them had both. Okay, so yeah, even something like Tyrannosaurus rex had feathers, and possibly not as an adult, but definitely as a juvenile, has some kind of fluffy, feathery covering. And many different dinosaurs from the theropod, the two-legged carnivorous dinosaur lineage, did have feathers. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, feathers predate birds by quite a bit. And of course, so do our dinosaurs today. Our dinosaurs today do not have teeth, but they have every other feature that dinosaurs had. Even T-Rex had a type of wishbone. So whenever we look at a dinosaur or a bird, same thing, whatever, a bird skeleton, like when you're having some fried chicken and you're starting to identify like the tibia or the humerus and all these different bones, or you're cutting into your Thanksgiving turkey, whatever it is, you are looking at the same bones that dinosaurs have. So we could look at a couple skeletons here where we have a dove skeleton, and it's got, yeah, the same bones as a velociraptor. And we have some differences, obviously. Birds have wings. They can't all, of course, fly, but they do have wings. And so those wings are modified, basically velociraptor hands. So that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of fusion going on in a bird's skeleton that allows it to be much lighter weight, much more efficient. Sometimes fewer bones allows for efficiency of movement and adding and being more lightweight than more bones. So all these long tailbone or all these tail bones that this dinosaur has for agility and balance and whatever else are fused together for this little thing called a pygostyle, and then the super lightweight feathers hanging off of that then kind of supply the same purpose, but the bones are gone. Birds also lose, or to be a bird, they also essentially lose their teeth. No birds today have teeth. I know geese have those weird ridges and they're terrifying when they chase you, but it's not actually teeth with roots, not like the many dinosaurs had. Though many dinosaurs would lose their teeth as well, partly to add lightness. And I think that's a really good way to think about birds. They're basically the race cars of the dinosaur world. They're all about dinosaurs, but they are adding lightness. They are becoming more and more lightweight by losing features, by streamlining features, and making some features bigger, right? Big muscle attachment site here for big breast muscles on our sternum. But generally, they're all about becoming more and more lightweight. And all birds today are descended from a flighted ancestor. We wouldn't say that penguins are descended from a dinosaur that swam. No, penguins are descended from a group of birds that used to fly and then took to the water, as many animals have done over time. So yeah, all birds have flight somewhere in their ancestry, as well as the adaptations for flight, even if now their wings are being used for something else. So I just wanted to show, as I talk about myself a little bit, a few of my bird buddies that I've had the honor of getting to hang out with. And so I've worked at the Cincinnati Zoo, where I got to handle a little screech owl, a great horned owl, and an American kestrel, and also a hyacinth macaw, extremely endangered type of bird. So some really cool experiences there, getting to educate the public on these animals. And yeah, speaking of education, this screech owl, which is very, very tiny, weighs just a few ounces, is not a baby. They really are just that size, and they live in the eastern United States. They live here. They live here in Ohio and Kentucky. I also volunteered for a group where I got to handle a red-tailed hawk, a beautiful little barred owl, and barred owls are just amazing. They are just sweet, and they're one of our most common owls too. We hear them a lot here in our region. And then currently I volunteer at the Newport Aquarium, where I get to hang out with some African penguins sometimes, though I kind of specialize and I spend more time with the sharks and fish than I do with penguins. So we get to hang out with birds all the time in our modern day life, right? We get to put out bird feeders. We can even own birds if we want. We eat them, So these are dinosaurs. So we get to hang out with modern day dinosaurs. So they are still super abundant and one of our most successful groups of animals. So that gets me then to what are our swimming dinosaurs? And obviously flying dinosaurs, yeah, during the Mesozoic, those reptiles, those pterosaurs were not dinosaurs, but there were flying dinosaurs. They were birds. Birds evolved probably about sometime in the middle to late Jurassic period. So when we have the big extinction event that took out all the big dinosaurs, it's not that birds evolved then. No, birds had already been around for quite a while when that extinction event occurred. They're just the only lineage of dinosaurs to have survived that extinction event. That's how we would talk about that. So yeah, dinosaurs lived with ducks and storks and other kinds of birds, a lot of the time. What about marine birds, or marine dinosaurs rather? Yeah, so the most, probably the best swimmer of all dinosaurs, and I do get kids asking me, what's the best swimmer of all the dinosaurs? Thinking I'm going to say like some kind of plesiosaur or maybe Spinosaurus or whatever. No, it's penguins. Not a doubt. Penguins are by far the best swimming dinosaur that's, yeah, I'd say ever lived. Though there were swimming birds during the Mesozoic as well. So that's pretty cool. We get to live with dinosaur buddies today. Oh, and then as we wrap up this, talking about what is a dinosaur, I also want to talk about what my research is all about. So my research is with a dinosaur called Ionosaurus from northwestern Montana. And yeah, I've been out in the field a few times for field experience, but this animal had already been collected largely. So I get to do lab work, which I kind of like, and that's really where most of the big discoveries of dinosaurs are happening. It's not about finding new species out in the field that we still need to collect, of course. It's about making huge discoveries in a laboratory using equipment and technologies that hospitals use, that all sorts of other pursuits use. We can use that to answer questions about dinosaurs that 20 years ago, 50 years ago, no one thought we could begin to learn this sort of stuff. So I cut open the bones of Ionosaurus and I look at the bone tissue. So this is a diamond saw at the Museum of the Rockies, where I did my research, affiliated with Montana State University. And so we embed a piece of that bone, little chunk here, in resin, and then slice it open, look at it, and see what the bone tissue tells us. And obviously, you can tell from the color here, this is fossilized bone, which just means that water has gone in and replaced the organics with other minerals. Uh, like phosphorus and silica and calcium carbonate and whatnot. But that doesn't mean that we are obliterating the original bone structure. It's preserved in a lot of cases. And these bones are not even in that great a shape. And yet, once we dig in, the bone tissue, the bone cells are preserved beautifully. So we could tell all sorts of things by looking at modern day animals and their bone tissue and tell then how long dinosaurs lived, how old the dinosaur was when it died. Did dinosaurs live hundreds of years? An individual animal live hundreds of years? No, more like 7 or something. So yeah, much faster lifespans, much higher metabolisms than we had expected. How big it was at different ages. How long did it take to reach adulthood? Did it take 3 years, 50 years? To give you a hint, it's more like 3 years to reach adulthood, and what age it actually became, a grown up, what age it became sexually mature. How rapidly its size would change during adolescence and childhood as well. How long they lived, mentioned that. It's kind of the same thing there. And then obviously that is going to help us understand their metabolism. So, if something usually lives for a very short period of time and grows very rapidly, that generally indicates a pretty high metabolism. So we can start to tell things about, are these animals warm-blooded? Or not. And yeah, they were some kind of warm-blooded, definitely higher metabolisms than we usually think about when we think about reptiles. But dinosaurs are not typical reptiles. They're not even closely related to things like snakes and lizards, and we can't really group them together with our modern day reptiles. They're somewhere between crocodiles and birds. And every part of their anatomy, every part of their, metabolism is somewhere between that of crocodiles and birds, more closely to the bird, uh, um, you know, because that's kind of what we're seeing in the fossils. The more we learn, so we have these growth rings that give us some good information as to exactly what size the animal was. I could outline that. Yeah, that'll have to be cleaner later. But anyway, I could outline that, measure the circumference of that bone, and tell exactly. Well, there's some error, but size it up, tell how big that animal was at its 3rd year of age, or its 4th year of age, or its 5th year of age by looking at their circumference of each of these bones. And these are leg bones, so they tend to give us some really good information. So with all that information, then we could tell, because this was a herd of animals that lived and died together, the geology of the site tells us that, then we could tell a lot about how these animals lived. How many adults were in a herd versus teenagers or babies or juveniles. We could think about social behavior. And yeah, we absolutely can get clues on behavior from, about an extinct group of animals. And that's really special. So anyway, this is not Ionosaurus. This is this looks like a mixed group of some different ceratopsian dinosaurs. They often lived in herds. And yeah, so we can get some really cool stuff there. We can get a whole snapshot of what that herd actually looked like, which is pretty cool. So this research is ongoing. I have a couple students involved, and it's fun stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to show one of my last pictures here that I like. This is from a group called Dinos Forever. And yeah, I think it's important as we think about what is a dinosaur. We're not thinking about things like big reptiles as dinosaurs, because we actually do have living dinosaurs. And yeah, we actually do have living dinosaur DNA. We don't have to find it in the fossils, we have it. And that's really, really cool. So yeah, these modern actual living dinosaurs are not impressed by you saying that things like Komodo dragons and crocodiles and whatever are dinosaurs, because we have them. And I think that is really, really special. So anyway, thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed that and learned something about what it means to be a dinosaur, and a little appreciation of geologic time, and a little taste of what this class is going to be like as we delve in much, much, much deeper into the world of the dinosaurs. So thanks a lot.